This is Target Score Weekly with Joey Slattery and Taylor Allen. Welcome into another edition, the season end edition of Target Score Weekly. The CEBL season now officially over. The Niagara River Lions are your CEBL champions. They've never missed the playoffs, Taylor, in their entirety of their franchise. The entire 6 years, they're one of the original franchises in the CEBL. They've never missed the playoffs, but up until this weekend, they'd never won a championship. So Vic Razzo and his team getting that first championship. They were by far the best team in the East, and they played the best team in the West, Vancouver. I thought for sure Vancouver had this in the bag. I was very confident Vancouver was going to win this one. Was a little bit shocked that Niagara was able to take it, but you kind of got to feel good for Niagara. All these years knocking on the door, they finally break it down.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the game was tied 95-95. Next basket wins the championship. I mean, come on, you can't write a better script than that. I mean, if there's any target time doubters, which I can't believe there would be any at this point, but if there's any target time doubters still, I mean, watch that game. How exciting is that? A professional basketball league's final going down to like a schoolyard game. Hey, next basket wins, right? The lunch bell's about to ring. Whoever scores next is over. So super exciting. I mean, it kind of looked like Niagara was going to blow it. They were up 3 at the free throw line. They just had to hit the second shot to win the title, and they bricked that. And Vancouver, credit to them, they run the ball down the court, hit a 3, tie the game, and it's like, oh shoot, here we go. But then credit to Niagara, they come back down, hit a nice floater, cap it off, seal the deal. So yeah, hell of a game, hell of a way to end the season.
And it was Khalil Ahmad. That's their best player. He misses the foul shots and then is able to come back and score that floater to win the game. I mean, and that guy's been the cornerstone of that team for years, right? I think this is at least his third year, maybe fourth year with the team. He's a former MVP, didn't have that championship, stuck with Niagara through it all. And that must have been just an unbelievable moment. Nate Kayo, actually, from Montreal, played for Montreal once upon a time, now wins a championship in his hometown. I mean, there are some really cool storylines with Niagara. I thought it was really good. I also have to give him credit. I mean, Vancouver's a tough team, right? Like we've talked about it, with Nick Ward, Mitch Creek, Tajay Moore, the MVP. He was held to what, like 6 points? I think he only had like 4 points the first half. But credit to Niagara. I mean, he had 6 points, 9 rebounds, though. I mean, credit to Tajay Moore. You're not scoring the ball. He did have 9 rebounds, but he had no assists. That was the part where I thought, like, if you can't score, you're getting the rebounds if you could set other guys up. But this is a team that really, really had a great defensive game plan. They stuffed Vancouver most of the game. And I think what impressed me most is when it started to pick up. They're up 10 at target time, Niagara over Vancouver. And it felt like Vancouver's making that run. And I remember thinking, I think I was actually talking to somebody and I said, it kind of feels like this might be a scenario of Vancouver not playing their best game and still being the best team in the league. You know what I mean? Like it was like they were slugging away the whole game, having trouble scoring. Their star player couldn't get it going, but it seemed like, okay, this is them just toying a little bit. They're going to come back. Mitch Creek had 26 points and 13 rebounds. I mean, what a star that guy was in the little time he was with that team. But then Niagara, 95-95. Like it kind of felt like that, like the Winnipeg scenario. Like every team is getting a taste of what happened to Winnipeg in Calgary, right? Because Calgary moved on from Winnipeg to Edmonton, had a similar thing happen there with or beat Edmonton, sorry, and then they moved on to the championship weekend where they played Vancouver, had a similar thing happen to them when they lost to Vancouver, and then Vancouver goes on and has the similar thing happen to them. Like it's just funny how sequential that is, that everybody's getting a taste of their own medicine down the line. But it was a good final. The game itself was great. Championship weekend I assume was good. Like, you didn't really see much. Like the award ceremony wasn't streamed or anything. Simon Hildebrand took home the development player of the year. Tajay Moore was the MVP. I thought Steph Smith might have been a little bit shunned with the 6th man of the year. I thought he earned that, but it went to Aaron Rye of Niagara. But yeah, overall, it seemed like it was a good weekend. I know there were some storms in Montreal for the Friday night, but it seemed the energy was good. It seemed loud. It felt better than the Vancouver one, if that makes sense. Like I felt in Vancouver last year, we talked about how empty it looked. There wasn't a lot of energy. This one, not that it was full. There were definitely some empty seats, and it's not a very big arena, but the energy there seemed a lot more fun this year. I don't know if you feel the same way, but Montreal also just a supportive town. Doesn't matter if they get a ton or a little. People that do show up are going to show out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's kind of interesting. I mean, Vancouver, they cleaned up the awards, right? MVP, Coach of the
Naturally,
Year,
yeah.
Canadian Player of the Year. So everyone was talking about them, right? It kind of reminded me of the Bombers a couple years ago when they lost their first of two losses in the Grey Cup to Toronto, where the Bombers cleaned up at the award show. Everyone was talking Bombers, 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 and then the big game happens, and it's like, I think Zach Claris would have traded his MOP award. Stanley Bryant would have traded his Lineman of the Year award for that Grey Cup ring, and same goes for Tajay Moore and the rest of those guys who won awards with the. I'm sure they would have traded that for the result that Niagara got. So yeah, I agree. I think it was a much better weekend than it was last year. I remember we talked about this last year, and that was kind of my big takeaway. It's like, man, like this is the championship weekend in Vancouver, and like it just didn't feel like that big of a deal, right? At least just from just watching and just kind of empty the crowd was and whatever. So this one was better, but I mean, it goes without saying. I mean, we don't even have to dive into this much. I mean, next year's weekend in Winnipeg is it going to be far and away the biggest and best one. So that's gonna be really cool to see. But speaking of Winnipeg, though, I mean, we got the this year's final, the championship weekend out of the way. I guess this is a Sea Bears podcast, Joey. I guess we should, rate the obituary for the
Bef-
2024 Winnipeg Sea
yes.
Bears. And
Before we do that, though, I've been pretty throughout this podcast since the Celtics won the championship. I've been very bullish on it. I've been very much maybe a little unfair with how much I've been throwing it in your face, right? And I thought, um, cat's out of the bag. You're going to be gone for a while. It's I'll let you can tell your news in a second. Or actually, do you want to tell them now where you're heading? Let's get that out of the way. Where are you going to be off to?
oh, okay, I wasn't expecting to do this now because the cat actually is not out of the bag, but I guess it will be now. So I mean, my media colleagues know, obviously, so to that extent, it's out of the bag.
Well, hey,
But
you're always asking people to break news on Target Score Weekly. Now you can break your own news.
that's true. Yeah, that's true. Every time I ask someone though, they don't end up doing it. So okay, but today will be the day. So anyways, this week Friday, which is the 16th, that'll be my last day working at the Winnipeg Free Press. Not permanently, but I'm going on a leave of absence. I'm taking a 10-month sabbatical with my beautiful girlfriend Janelle, and we're gonna travel throughout Southeast Asia. So we leave August 22nd. We're gonna start in Malaysia. We're hoping to see 10 to 12 different countries, spend a couple weeks here, a couple weeks there, and yeah, it's gonna be really cool. So it's something we've been talking about for a long time, and it's pretty surreal that it's literally now like a week or so away until our butts are actually on the plane. So now the anxiety's kicking in a little bit, and all these goodbyes are starting to happen. It's getting a little hard and whatnot, but I don't think too many Winnipeggers are going to have sympathy for me when it's minus 40 in December, and I'll be chilling on a beach in the Philippines. So hey, but yeah, I mean it is bittersweet though because I love my job, and I'm kind of bailing on the Bombers midway through the season and whatnot. So that's gonna be kind of weird. And curling season, right? We kind of insert some curling talk into the show here and there. I'm gonna be missing that as well. So that'll be kind of bittersweet. But yeah, I mean, for those that know me at all, I've always had a huge passion for traveling, and this is an itch that kind of needs to be scratched. So yeah, 10 months away. It's gonna be awesome, and who knows? Maybe I'll find some room in my suitcase for my microphone, and might be able to still pop by Target Square Weekly here and there. You never know, but yeah. So that's what's going on in my world. That's why you've probably have seen me with a different backdrop these past 3 or 4 episodes. I've been living in different places currently living with my mom because I'm renting out my house. So shout out to my mom, Pat, for putting a roof over my head.
Pat's
But
an
yeah, so
absolute saint, by the way.
yes, she is. Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, that's my life. That's my story for anyone that cares. So yeah.
Well, I'm excited for you. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm also very jealous. That's like a bucket list trip for sure. And but you're gonna have fun. You're coming back. It's not a big deal. 10 months is gonna fly like that. But I did figure, I'm like, poor Taylor. He puts up with my stuff all the time, and I'm just here on the Celtics all the time. And I thought, you know what? The Pacers had a great season, right? I mean, you stick by this Pacers team, they shock you getting to the Eastern Conference Finals, right? I mean, you were so close to getting to that final. And I said, I got to commemorate that season. I got to commemorate that Pacers season for Taylor. So I went on the NBA store and I said, you know what? I'm going to get something and I want to show you right now, just commemorating such a great season for the Indiana Pacers.
Oh, here we go.
Oh,
I knew the punchline was coming. I knew it.
what do you mean? Like I couldn't get a runner-up shirt, so I got the Eastern Conference champion shirt here.
Oh man.
Hey, it was tough for the Celtics too. I mean, how many games did that series last? 4? Like it was hard.
Hey,
So yeah, I
we
just
we
thought,
we should
this
have
would be the
won
day
game
that,
one.
yeah, well, exactly, right? So this is me conceding that yes, you should have. This is the best I could do to commemorate the season that was. And I wasn't going to buy an Eastern Conference Final shirt, but I thought, you know what, we got the title. This is for Taylor, so you're welcome, buddy.
Hey man, Tyrese Halliburton, Olympic gold medalist.
Did you
Future
see?
USA basketball. He actually contributed a little bit to the team, unlike your Celtics over there riding the bench. I mean, Tyrese wrote the bench as well, but
Yeah, I don't know, man. That's a record. 3 players on one NBA team winning a gold medal, and they won the championship. I don't know, man. You can frame that any way you want. I'm cool with it. But Tyrese Halliburton had the funniest tweet coming out of the Olympics.
I don't
Did you
think I
see
saw
that?
it.
Or the Instagram post where he's like in the bus with his medal, and he's like, um, just getting an A, whatever, something along the lines of like getting an A, doing nothing on the group project.
Oh yeah,
Was pretty funny.
yeah,
I thought it
that's
was
fair.
good. But yeah, I was also getting a little warm, so that's why I had to do this mid episode. But all right, now that that's out of the bag, yeah, the Winnipeg Sea Bears. You talked about the championship weekend. One thing about championship weekend, when we did the end of year availability with the Sea Bears, Mike Taylor and Jason Smith were out in Montreal for championship weekend, and they talked about it a little bit. And it's what he's one of the things Jason Smith said is that they're scouting, right? What works, what they have to follow, and what they can work with. Someone had asked about collaboration with the Bombers too, and he said, if there's a natural avenue there, sure, but it's actually probably not the best timing because it's like kind of far away from August to November. But he's like, they've got a good relationship. If there's a chance to collaborate, then sure. But yeah, like this championship weekend, like I kind of get the vibe they were out there and looking at it like, okay, we got a lot to work with, right? It'll come down to, I know there's certain things they have to do based on league mandate and stuff like that. It is confirmed that Winnipeg will get the bye next year as well. So they're not changing that rule. So Winnipeg is guaranteed into the semifinals next year, or the conference finals rather. But we've seen what that does to teams, Taylor. And there's a lot of changes that need to happen this year. Or maybe actually, I shouldn't say a lot of changes. The opposite needs to happen with the Sea Bears next year. Less changes would be great. So this year, the players, Alex Campbell, Chad Posthumous, Emmanuel Acott were there for the year end availability. And all of them shared the sentiment that just the most frustrating part was being unable to win on the road, right? They had one win the entire season. They were 1-9 in the regular season, at 1-10 if you include the loss in Calgary for the playoff round, and the high turnover. I mean, this year was nuts. What, 5 players in, 5 players out within a matter of weeks, and we're not talking, depth guys. We're talking the reigning MVP. We're talking a former first round NBA draft pick and starter. We're talking a guy that to me probably was the first domino to fall. Like we put it all on Teddy, but Darius Days, losing him, they only had him for 3 games. That guy was like the quintessential guy you were missing the entire season, the guy you were not able to replace. And I think this is a thing that's happened across the league. I was listening into the Saskatchewan Rattlers end of season availability with their president Barry Rollick, and he said the same thing. It's just, how do we do this? How do we negotiate contracts to get guys to stay, right? Like, because they had a lot of turnover too with their team. The Jalen Harris, Harkless, like two guys that were leading the way. Seemed like Sass was gonna have a nice season, then they're gone. Then you're bringing in Teddy Allen, and you're just trying to fill spots, and it becomes hard. But next year, it's a weird thing. So if we're gonna tie a bow on this year, I mean, obviously the first round exit is exactly where they were last year. The only difference is they couldn't even get the home game this year. So we were wrong on our predictions. We thought it was going to be a lot closer to last year, and it was not. I mean, this team, record wise, took a big step back. There's a lot of promise this season. There was a lot of star treatment coming into the season with Teddy Allen, and kind of having that NBA feel to it. And you kind of heard Mike Taylor walking it back a little bit in his post game or in his postseason availability, of just maybe that wasn't the right way to go about it, and how do we kind of build that team cohesion. Because I think losing Teddy Allen, Darius Days to me was the first one to, like, I think, where the problem started. Just losing that dependable guy. That guy is a big stretch four, could shoot the three, energy guy. But then you lose Teddy Allen and everything changes. You bring in an all-star point guard, MVP runner-up 2 years in a row with Justin Wright Foreman. Roles have to change. Guys said that was challenging. Mike Taylor admitted that was challenging for guys, and they try to communicate those changes. But you come in one way, expecting to play one way, have a certain role, and then it's all taken away from you. And then you're kind of flying at the seat of your pants, trying to figure out, how do I fulfill a role on this team to get us over the hump. But yeah, to me, that it's just, there was no, even at home. And I said this throughout the season, like, yes, they were exciting games, but there were a lot of close games. They didn't blow anybody out at home, right? There was a few games, like three in particular, that I can think back of, that they probably should have lost. And I look back at the Saskatchewan one, where they were down 10, the Vancouver one where they were down 12, both at target time, and they mounted these incredible comebacks. The missed foul shot for Scarborough, that goes back, and Alex Campbell hits, in the home opener. I mean, this season, a couple of bounces in a few games. This is a whole, actually, less than that, or more than that, I should say, because some bounces went Winnipeg's way, that if they don't get those bounces, they lose two games for sure, and they probably lose that one against Scarborough. So you look at this hovering around 500 team, could have been below 500 and missed the playoffs altogether. So this team, to me, yes, it was a disappointment for sure. There's no way around it. With the expectation that was there, the players that were signed, even with the changes, I just don't think they ever reached their full potential. We saw flashes of it. We saw a game here, a game there, where everything clicked, and they had these great character wins that you thought they were going to build on. But at the end of the day, it's the same results. In fact, maybe even a little lesser, because they didn't get that extra playoff game.
Well, one quick thing on next year's championship weekend and the fact that the Sea Bears are going to get the bye to be there, because it has been talked about, more and more from people saying, I think it's kind of lame that the host, they get that spot in the final four. And you've heard some players kind of say, yeah, it kind of messes with your head and whatever. And I remember talking to Mike Morreale about that before the season started, like asking him, like, is Winnipeg guaranteed a spot in the final four when they host it? And he said, well, we're still trying to figure that out. But I can't say I'm surprised they're sticking with this formula, because let's be honest, this league is also a business. And if you can tell the Winnipeg market, hey, your beloved Sea Bears are for sure gonna be there in that final four. I mean, we all know that the people are gonna go crazy for that. Tickets will probably sell out, and it'll be a huge success. Where if the Sea Bears wouldn't be there, it could be a different story. So I could see why they would hang on to that concept for at least one more year, but we'll see if when they go to a market that isn't as bananas for the CEBL's Winnipeg, if they'll stick with that or not. So anyways, wasn't surprised about that. But now moving on to this past year Sea Bears team, and I mean, we've been having this conversation for weeks now about the roster turnover, can't win on the road, and all the kind of the drama with this team and whatever. And honestly, I think it's really fair to say that this team, this organization, took a big step back this year. I mean, last year they punched above their weight. They really impressed a lot of people and really turned themselves into a very attractive destination. Now, if you're a free agent in this league and you're looking at what happened this year, all the roster turnover didn't look like any of these guys had any fun. right? They did not look like a fun season for these guys whatsoever. Some of these guys were promised roles and it didn't end up working out that way and whatever. Like it was a disaster, an absolute disaster. So I don't think they're gonna have as easy of a time, recruiting this offseason. I mean, sure, being guaranteed a spot in the final four, that might, kind of cover up some of their warts and whatnot. But I mean, just for an example, Jared Ogunbemi Jackson is a guy that this team, I've kind of went on this rant before, but this is a guy that they spent really 2 years recruiting, promising him that he'd start and, really marketing him and whatever, whatever. And then what was it? 5 games into the year, they pulled the rug from underneath them and brought in Justin Wright Foreman, who I understand is a very, very good basketball player. But you bring this guy in, and Jared gets relegated to the bench, playing 18 or so minutes a night, and it's like, do you think that's what he signed up for? Like, he doesn't need to play in this league. Like he plays overseas in Europe. He's been doing that for nearly a decade, makes good money doing that and whatever. Like he made a sacrifice to come and play in this league. I'm sure he would like he easily could have. I'm sure he would have loved to just be home for the summer, enjoy his time with his family and friends. I mean, it's a very crazy life, playing overseas and being away from your family and friends for months and months and months. And he just became a new dad recently. And then here's a guy who, I don't know this. I haven't talked to him since the season ended or whatever, but he kind of wasted his time, right? Like that was kind of disrespectful how that all played out. So, and players talk and whatever. You don't want that reputation of a team who's promising a guy something and then doesn't end up happening and whatever. And again, like all the roster turnover, there was every move, there was a different story to it. And I get that. And some of them were out of the Sea Bears' control and whatever. But at the end of the day, like it was just an absolute mess. And Justin Wright Foreman, again, fantastic player, but 2 seasons, 2 teams of him being the face of a team and 0 playoff wins. And even Saskatchewan didn't even make the playoffs. Is this a guy that you want to continue building your team around?
He hadn't been in the
Maybe
playoffs
not.
until this
Well,
game
exactly,
in his
exactly.
professional
So is
career.
that a
Yeah.
guy? Is that a guy you want to keep building your team around? I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying that's a conversation that you definitely need to have. And for me, I'm kind of old school. I don't think your point guard should be scoring, being your main option on the offense. I think it kind of, bogs down your offense a little bit when your point guard's one dribbling up the ball and he's kind of doing everything on his own and whatever. So I don't know, but this year's team, I think, and I spoke about this the other week, they just didn't have the bigs, right? Like it really came down to that. I mean, Simon played 30 minutes in their playoff game, and yes, he's a hell of a prospect and whatever, but he should not be playing 30 minutes a night. Stefan Ingo, here's a guy who was on a coaching staff a couple weeks ago. He's playing 27 minutes in your playoff game. Chad, great face of the team. He can give you five, six, seven, nine, eight, nine, 10, solid minutes, but he's no longer a starting big in this league. They just did not have the bigs to go on a run and all the roster turnover, whatever. And I mean, you look at this roster. I think you can count on one hand how many of these guys would be back. Like it's not going to be. It won't be a lot. I can tell you that. I mean, Simon, Chad probably. After that, I think it's wide open, and I think the Sea Bears need to move on from lots of these guys, and I think lots of these guys will want to move on from the Sea Bears as well.
Even with Simon, like, I mean, you look at Simon right now. He's won last year. We know after the season, he had some, looks from the US and he stays with the University of Manitoba. Another year with Manitoba, they get to the Canada West Championships, can't get to nationals, but he's back to back developmental player of the year. In the CEBL. Do you care to three-peat? I don't know, right? Like what? Like at this point, too, it might look at: do I have something to lose? Like if I have a bad season next year, does that hurt me in any way, shape, or form? So, but what I'm getting at is, I'm just wondering: is Simon going to like explore American universities? I haven't heard anything yet. It's getting close to that point where you'd have to report to your teams, whether that's in Canada or not. But yeah, it's there's another guy where it's like, is he coming back next year? Will he be able to if he decides that, hey, maybe this is the year I'm going to go play in the US and play for a D1 school and maybe try to get to a tournament, right? I mean, you have a thing about pro basketball is you've got your whole career after college to play pro, right? How long that lasts is another thing, but when college is done, you can push to have as long as a pro career as you can possibly have. you get one shot at university and college, right? So a part of me is I'm wondering is he more interested in like, hey, we have something going on here at U of M. I think we can go win a championship, or does he go, you know what, I've only would have improved my portfolio from a year ago. What are the offers looking like now, right? And one of the things he said in another interview I had with him, he talked about. I asked him about that, and he said, and they just didn't want me for me, like in the States, right? They just wanted to check a box. I can shoot threes, I can rebound, I'm tall, whatever. Where he's like, with U of M, I feel like I'm very like I'm there for Simon Hildebrandt. So I'm wondering, as a team now, been like, yeah, you know what? Now I'm going to take a chance on this guy. Like, it's not so much because he fills a box and I'm going to have him off the bench. He's actually going to have opportunity here. I don't know. I'm interested to see because now we're at the point where you turn the page over on the CEBL. You've got a few weeks now to make those decisions. We've seen a few guys go to the States from U Sports. Elias Ralph, went to California as one off the top of my head with his head coach, Mike Beaucamp, who was the head coach at Vic for 20 something years. And now he's going with Dave Smart, the great coach from Carleton University, who's I guess, head coach in the program. I think it's Liberty College or something. It's a D1 program in California. So we're at the point now, though, the season's over. You've got a few weeks. So it'll be interesting to see, Simon and other U Sports guys, what their plan is from here. But you're right. You might get Chad. Stefan Ingo, as far as I know, is going to Sacramento to be a video coach or whatever with the Kings. And or I don't know if that's actually a position, but from what I understand, he's going there in some sort of coaching capacity. So you look at the roster from this past year. Who do you want to bring back? Who is realistic to bring back? And what changes do you have to make to bring some people back? Because I think that's one big thing. Is I think some guys will be open to the idea of returning, especially with a guaranteed spot so close to the championship. But we've seen this 2 years in a row now. The team that got in was the worst team in the league. 2 years ago, it was Vancouver, or last season, I should say, was Vancouver. This season, it was Montreal, right? So you get in, and Montreal had a good game in the conference final. But at the end of the day, the Seabears fans don't want to watch. As excited as they'll be, they don't want to come and watch a 3-17 team limp into the conference final and watch them get blown out of the gym every year or every game. So that's one thing. Mike Taylor, I asked him about that directly, the benefits and challenges, and he said the benefit is like you kind of have that. Well, we're in a great position to win a championship, but he doesn't want that to be the excuse not to play hard, right, and not to improve that record. So it'll be interesting next year because you do have that caveat of kind of like in the Memorial Cup when you host it, you power up because you're going to the tournament. Here, are you going to be able to do that? And what is that team going to look like? The interior presence, you're right, has been a huge issue for this team this year, particularly after Darius left and Byron didn't pan out. And then it was just kind of, Noah Starkey. I mean, that guy was there. I don't know. Like the guy had no hands, it felt like at times, and had a hard time getting to, passes inside and, slapping the ball away in rebounds. Like it's just, he was a big guy, but it wasn't a guy they needed to have the impact, or wasn't the guy to have the impact that they needed. So now that's going to be a big thing this year. Interior presence, Canadian talent. Who's out there? Who wants to come here? And yeah, what's that team going to look like? I mean, Mike Taylor, to his credit, has brought a lot of stars to Winnipeg, right? And he's brought some, especially this year. I'll give him credit. I mean, for the players that you were able to bring in a pinch, even the Stefan Ingo, the minutes that he played, I mean, he was super effective, more effective than last year. So it's like, you get the big names, and then you get a guy who played for you last year, didn't do much, and then this year was a huge impact player after not playing the whole season, essentially. So it'll be interesting to see, though, this year how the recruiting goes. I think this past year was easy because of all of the hype around the Sea Bears, those hype videos and the, recruiting videos where you see that, anywhere from 7 to 11,000 fans or whatever they hit this year. So like the atmosphere's there. But guys are going to have to look at it and be like, well, I want to play in that atmosphere, but I want to win. And you're going to have to find the people that can find that balance, that play well under that pressure and aren't going to let that pressure take over where it's like, no, I got to be the star of this team because I want 11,000 people chanting MVP or whatever it is, in that gym. So it's going to be a lot harder, I think, for Mike Taylor this year. And I think he's going to be just looking at it from a different lens, because last year I think probably went a lot easier just because of everything from the year before. But he's got to find that balance from the team that he built in year one and the advantages he had to recruiting star players in year two. Where's that balance of finding the star players with proper role players that are going to make a complete team and make it hard on other teams to guard? And again, I don't know if we're going to see like a Teddy Allen, Justin Wright Foreman situation here, because it just hasn't worked. And that was one of the things that he alluded to in the interview process, like the exit interview, was the team game, right? And not necessarily having the star and getting all the scoring through them. This is a FIBA league. The teams that do well in this are teams that play cohesively, that can move the ball around fast and not necessarily ISO. It's nice to have that guy, but you had him last year in Jelani Watson Gale, right? Jelani, it was come target time, shot clock winding down. We know who we're going to. And I never felt like they had that guy. It was Justin Wright Foreman by default, but it just like the rules were more defined, it felt like a year ago. EJ Anasike, hard on the boards, a pest inside, but could also stretch out to three. So he kept the defense honest. Then you had Jelani, the closer. And another thing, they didn't have an international player this year. And that's one thing he mentioned in the exit interview as well. Finding an international player and taking advantage of that spot and seeing what's out there. And, I'm assuming he's going to be protected, but part of me is like, is every team in the league has to be going after Mitch Creek, right? I mean, that guy came in out of nowhere, essentially. I mean, when I say out of nowhere, he's got a very decorated resume, a impressive resume of pro basketball. But the guy just pops into Vancouver because he wanted to extend his summer. He's from Australia. That's what when I was talking to him. He's like, yeah, it was cold in Australia. So I thought, hey, I'll go to Vancouver for a few weeks and play basketball here. But he turned that franchise around and they were already doing well. But it just seemed like there was a camaraderie instantly with that guy. And that was just one thing that Winnipeg never got. No guy came in at any point this year, whether it's, Scotty Lindsay, guys liked him and stuff like that, but no one had that magnetic energy and that accountability energy of Mitch Creek. So, I'm not saying he's coming to the Sea Bears or anything, but I imagine like, you see them taking advantage of an international spot and what they were able to do themselves with Jelani and what they saw Vancouver do with Mitchell Creek. I think you're going to see a bigger emphasis on that international spot this year, not only for the Sea Bears, but for the entire league.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. But I think one of the top priorities for Mike Taylor, if there's one guy from this year's team that they should really, make a big recruiting pitch to keep, I think it's Emmanuel Acott. I mean, every team in
Yeah.
this league has strong American players. You got to win with your Canadians. You got to stand out with your Canadians. And Emmanuel Acott is a guy that can do that. He's a younger guy, only going to get better. I mean, he was really probably the breakout star for this team this year. I mean, he spent a little time with Ottawa last year, didn't really jump off the page, but this year, even though he missed training camp, he was a huge addition for this club. And when he was hurt a little bit in the last week or two of the season, I mean, they really missed him. So I think if they can, keep Emmanuel, be one of the guys that they can really build around, that would be huge. And Mike did say in his presser that, yeah, like the first thing I'm doing is, focusing on the Canadian talent, which is also what he did this past offseason. But yeah, I think that's the right strategy to go. Focus on the Canadians, and like you said, bringing in an international player would be huge as well. Because I mean, Jelani Watson Gale was arguably their third best player last year, so I thought that was really kind of puzzling that they wouldn't go down that road again this year with a different international player. So yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I think you could count on one hand how many of these guys would be back. I wouldn't be surprised if it's even just those three guys there: Simon, Chad, Emmanuel, the three local guys, and the rest is totally different. I mean, Mason Bercier, that was a guy who was brought in potentially to be a starting point guard, or a sixth man type of guy, and he ended up having a big role. But then they signed Jared, fair enough, and then they end up signing Justin Wright Foreman. So it's like his role, what he was probably told when he first signed, changed quite a bit as well. So, and he's been in on a couple different teams now. And is he going to be super eager to come back to Winnipeg? Probably not.
Well, I think it was,
Alex Campbell as well. I mean, that's
yeah.
one of the arguably the most accomplished Canadian player in this league, and he's in his 30s now, but he's still a really solid player as well. And he barely got the ball lots of games as well. Is he going to be eager to come back to Winnipeg? Probably not. So yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of roster turnover this offseason, which could be good for Target Score Weekly because there'll be so many different new faces I can have on the show. But yeah, it's gonna
Yeah.
be weird because year one, year two, totally different rosters, and year three probably gonna be a totally different roster as well. So I think it was like our first episode or second episode this year. We were talking about like they should sell player Sea Bears jerseys with the player name on the back. Well, maybe they shouldn't because at this rate, you mean every summer it's a
Or
whole
maybe
new
they should. They're gonna
contract.
make everybody's gonna have, like, 18 different jerseys because 'cause they'll have different dudes
Yeah,
every year, right? But
good
no,
point.
I think there was a bit of a, the dream, right? I think Mike Taylor thought, knowing what he knew of the players, like, well, if we get Teddy and Justin Wright Foreman together and we can get them to play in that kinda, cohesive, FIBA style of play, like, yeah, they'll excel and everything else, but it just didn't work out, and I think that's a lesson learned as well. Emmanuel Acott, to me, if I'm Emmanuel, I am seriously thinking of coming back next year because you came in here, they put you from guard to forward, and at times you're playing the five, and you came in and actually saw yourself excel. So you came in with, I wouldn't say little expectations. I don't know what we were expecting, right? It's like, okay, here's a guy with NCAA caliber. He was a superstar in high school. And what's he going to do here? And he became a very solid player. And he saw when I'm gone, look what happens, right? Like, I'm an integral part of this team's success. And he's still young. He's still playing in Winnipeg. But I think that's maybe one of the guys who was a little happier in his role because it shifted in ways that gave him more playing time, but also allowed him to expose other strengths. I think in a perfect world, you have him not playing the five, right? Where you can kind of have him at the 3-4, depending on the situation, and build around that, which would be great. Alex Campbell is in the interview, the exit interview, kind of alluding to things we have to change. And it just kind of struck me as like, okay, he's thinking coming back. Like, you're not saying this team or they have to do this. It was like, it was a very much a weave between the guys that were there. And they're probably strategically picked to be there because they're probably dudes that are most likely to come back. I don't know for sure. But, it's just you got two Winnipeggers and Alex Campbell, who lives in Saskatoon and has a strong relationship with Mike Taylor. And not only that, you want to win another championship. Why not go to the team that's going to the tournament and hosting? And that'll be a lot of fun. But yeah, on the other hand, I don't think anything's guaranteed. It's going to take some scouring a little bit this year, I think, to find those players, to talk them to come up. And you got to remember there's a salary cap, right? So even some of the players he signed, you're thinking like, wow, like, to able to get everything like that under the salary cap. But then that's the problem. You spend heavy on certain areas and then you're kind of plugging holes. And those holes were never plugged for very long, right? So it's like you patch it up for a game or two and then, the tape comes off and then the boat is leaking again, right? So whatever. But it'll be interesting to see that inside presence is going to be huge to me. If I'm Emmanuel Acott, Mason Bercier is the other guy I wanted to say too. Mason, to me, I think had a great season because he did get the starting thing. I don't know if that was promised to him. I think there was a good opportunity to come him as a depth guy, and I think he filled that really well. And he played really well when he had to start for those few games, and it gives him something to work towards. Mason strikes me as a guy who is not worried about the personal accolades and things like that. I think he understands if I can fill a role, win a championship, that's going to get me my money down the road in Europe or future CEBL contracts. But that guy's still super young. And we forget that, right? We think that he's like a 5-10 year vet. This is really technically his first pro season out of school. So this guy's
For
got
Mason?
some, yeah, because he was last year, he was still considered a CEBL U Sports guy from his first year out of Trinity
Oh,
Western.
okay,
So
okay.
technically, this year in Britain, and then this CEBL year was his first year with like
Oh,
out
yeah, you're right,
developmental
yeah.
to his name, if that makes sense. So yeah, so here's a guy where if I'm Mason and Emmanuel, I think those are two guys that if I'm Mike Taylor, I want to be on right away. And if I'm those guys, I'm definitely open to coming back because now you're sitting there thinking, okay, it's going to be a blank slate. I've seen what went wrong. I'm one of the guys returning. I have a bit more of a leadership role. I'm going to be a little more confident. And when these new guys come in, we're going to be able to help those guys get accomplished and figure out that culture that we need to win. So if I'm those guys, I'm definitely open to coming back. I'm not saying they are. I've not talked to them about it, but just based on what I'm seeing, to me, they're like the two players where out of everything this season and the confusion and the roles and all this other stuff, those are two guys that probably walk out of here thinking, okay, but I've developed a lot. And even Emmanuel Acott said, like, technically I'm a rookie in this league, but this is what I do. This is what I know I'm capable of doing. And I have a little more confidence moving on. And I've gotten more offers because of this season this summer. Like in terms, or maybe looks. I don't remember if it was offers or looks, but it seems like he's getting more attention. So definitely from a development standpoint, they've got some guys that are up and coming that they can keep, but it's finding those stars that want to be here, want to play the team game, and absolutely want to win a championship at all costs. A guy that, yes, when the clock's winding down and we need that basket, we can get it to them, but also a dude that's like, hey man, I just gotta hustle and dive for this ball, get this rebound, whatever today, and set up my other dude who has the hot hand right now and is gonna win us this game. But yeah, anyway, it's going to be interesting either way, Taylor. Next year, championship weekend is here. What is that team going to look like? It's going to be a very interesting offseason. We're probably not going to hear much until about January, maybe even a little after that, once free agency starts coming a little bit closer around. I'm interested to see who's on every team's protected list and which one of those guys are going to stick with those teams. But yeah, nonetheless, disappointing season for the Sea Bears. A ton of fun at home. Their home record does not suggest that. It was a very exciting time. They beat some really good teams coming from behind. Definitely some things to build on, but I don't know if the core is going to be there that was there this year to help build on it. In fact, that core changed throughout the season.
Very true. And I think that kind of sums up these Sea Bears. I mean, it was a pretty bad year. They don't deserve any more attention here. So maybe we'll pivot to some Olympics basketball, because I
Yeah.
mean, hey, we could have done a whole episode on that. So maybe we'll start with Canada. Right? We've talked
Okay.
several times on this show. You got Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. You got everyone's favorite player, Dylan Brooks. You got the Dorcher Chamber, sorry, Lou Dort. And then you're adding Jamal Murray, who wasn't at the FIBA World Cup with these guys last year. You add him to the mix, and oh man, we're definitely gonna, at the very least, bring home bronze. And they start out 3-0. It looks like that's gonna happen. Worst case scenario. Play France in the quarterfinals. Yeah, the Olympics are in Paris. Yeah, they're probably gonna get more whistles than us, but we are so much deeper, more talented than those guys. And then the ball tips off, and it's a completely different story. Take me
Wow.
through your thoughts on that game, because I don't know about you. It's been what, over a week now, and I still haven't recovered.
All right, I'll keep it quick because we only have a few minutes here. But yes, I think we got ahead of ourselves. I don't think this was a bad Olympics. If you tell me we got to the quarterfinal after sweeping the group of death, uh, I'd be very happy with that. It's once you get past that and you're in it, it's like, oh man, now I start feeling the medals, and this is our year. They hadn't been there in 24 years, so I think this was a great step forward for the team. Yeah, Jamal Murray didn't play great, but Jamal Murray hasn't been himself. He has some games here and there, even in the playoffs. He played well against the Lakers. That last game against Minnesota was great, but he's a dude that slowed down a little bit. Maybe the injuries are catching up. I don't know. But to me, that was a good France team playing at home, and they almost beat the US in the gold medal game, right? I mean, that was an exciting game too. So it wasn't like they just got beat by a bunch of schlubs. They got beat by a really good France team who was extra motivated, who has arguably the best up and coming player in the world in Wemby, and you lost. It's fine. Like that is basketball. It's a one and done. That's the difficulty of this. And these players are not used to that. They play in series type playoffs. So I'm good with it. I thought it was great. I thought France was underrated. I thought they played really well in that tournament to get through. I was kind of rooting for Serbia. I thought Serbia was going to pull off that upset on the US. But the thing I've learned, if I'm going to wrap it up and then I'll give you your final thoughts, we learned that the world is catching up. This might be the last time we have like a very dominant and when I say dominant, they're going to be very good, but I think the dominance is getting smaller and smaller for the US. They're always going to have the players and the volume and the best players, but we're noticing the game is slightly different. Guys are growing up playing it at a higher level. They're playing pro elsewhere, which isn't that much less than the NBA. We just see the NBA more. That's why we just say it's the best and they pay the best. But the world is catching up. And what I really liked was the parity as this tournament went on. Even South Sudan, like out of nowhere, started like they lost by a point in the pre-qualify or the pre-tournament to the States, and they had a heck of a run too. So this is going to be very competitive. And for Canada's point, you got to keep this up because it's not getting any easier. Yes, they took a huge step up, but every other country did too. And you're still chasing the USA. But it's not going to be, I think, these next few teams without LeBron and Curry's and KD's. It's very much going to be like a very good US team with very good NBA players, superstars as well. But I don't think it's going to have that same aura that this team did moving forward because the rest of the world's getting good. You're up.
Aura, good word choice. I know it was our first time at the Olympics in men's basketball since Sydney 2000. So yes, I get it. You win 3 games, you win your round robin pool, make it to the quarterfinals. That's a huge, huge step forward for this program, and that's great. But at the end of the day, though, we can't be happy about that. We have the second most NBA players outside of the United States of America. With
Mhm.
with that fact alone, you should be medaling at the Olympics. And yes, they lost to Wemby in France, but Wemby didn't even have that good of a game, and he's still a kid. How hard is France
Mhm.
going to be in 4 years when Wemby's still not even
Exactly.
in his prime, but approaching his prime, right? Like this was a year it was open. They were on the side of the bracket where the Americans were not. They could have made it to the final. They
Mhm.
could be wearing a silver medal around their necks right now. And Jamal Murray, it was great to see him, represent the country and stuff. My goodness, he was terrible. Like you said, like in the playoffs with the Denver, like he something's off with this guy. He must have an injury or something, but he was a huge letdown for us. And Dylan Brooks, who's been sensational every single time he's worn the maple leaf for us, had picked the wrong day to have his worst game for Team Canada. And the French, they did the right thing. They're like, hey, anyone but Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, you can beat us, but Shea, you're not the guy that's going to beat us. Like they were doubling him, not letting him get the ball. Like they made life hard on him. And unfortunately, no one else for Canada stepped up. So
Mhm.
we'll chalk it. Wow, see, I'm getting choked up over here. Wow, sorry. So, anyways, we'll chalk it up as a learning experience and whatever. But it is a huge disappointment. Like I thought bronze medal was going to be, at the very least what we could pull off and make it to the final maybe, and give the Americans a run for their money, and still probably lose obviously. But so yeah, it was disappointing, but I do respect your glass half full approach, because you're right. I mean,
Yeah.
even 8 years ago, we would have killed just to even make it to the Olympics. Never mind win 3 games in a row, and one of them being over Spain. Like, imagine telling yourself 15 years ago that one day Canada would beat Spain in the Olympics. And yes,
Yeah.
I'm aware that the Gasol brothers don't play anymore, and all their other studs that they had, Ricky Rubio and whatnot. But still, that was pretty cool seeing them beat Spain, but and beating Giannis in
Totally.
Greece as well. But yeah, I
And
want
you're allowed
more,
to feel
Joey. I
you're allowed
want a
to feel
medal.
either way. Yep, and it'll come, I'm sure. Disappointing season for Canada, disappointing for, Winnipeg. There's always next year, or in Canada's case, in 4 years. We are working on a special finale episode, so we should have one more coming down the pipe. But yeah, Taylor, thanks so much for sharing, and we'll have one more before we send you off to Asia. Thanks for tuning in as always. Have a great one, and we'll be back for one more before the end of the season.
And
See ya.
hopefully Joey wears a much nicer shirt than that piece of
I'm
garbage
just
he's
stretching.
currently wearing.
I'm just stretching.
Unbelievable.
Thank you for listening to the Target Score Weekly podcast. To stay up to date with Winnipeg Sea Bears and CEBL news, as well as future episode releases, follow Joey and Taylor on Twitter and Instagram at TaylorAllen31 and at Joey Slattery TV. And wherever you're getting the podcast, be sure to subscribe to never miss an episode.